This is Mike T. Nelson, and we're going to talk today about metabolic flexibility with fat loss and a few other topics as well. So, Mike, could you kind of tell us a bit about yourself and where you've come from and what you do at the moment?
Sure. So the short version of my background is, when I initially started in school, I always thought physiology stuff was pretty cool. So I did a Bachelor of Arts in Natural Science, and I actually ended up doing a master's in mechanical engineering, so biomechanics type stuff. I finished that and said, I'm never going back to school again. I lasted about 2 years, did a short stint in the PhD program in biomedical engineering. Had to sit through a class on MRIs that was just horrible, dropped out of that. I went over to the physiology department, actually, and I went over there to avoid all math because I got so tired of math, even though I basically had a minor in it. And day one that I sit down, and my advisor looks at me and he goes, "Hey, we have two projects. One's on heart rate variability. Another one's on, looking at metabolic flexibility stuff, which involves the same math that we're using heart rate variability." And he looks all around the table and he goes, "Hey, you're the math nerd. These are your projects now." And I'm like, I came over here to avoid math. So anyways, that was kind of the main coursework that I did. And so I finished the PhD in exercise physiology this past November, actually, which is good.
Awesome.
And then, so I work training clients, mostly online now, to be honest. I have a gym in my garage, which works out pretty well. I also teach, this quarter I'm teaching 4 classes. So anatomy and physiology this quarter, fitness analysis, child fitness, that kind of stuff. So yeah, keeps me busy.
Awesome, good times. So could you explain to us what you mean by kind of flexible dieting with, as in the metabolic side of it, as you said earlier?
Yeah, so metabolic flexibility is something that's been around in the literature for quite a while. I didn't invent the term. It's actually David Kelly's term. He's probably the first person that coined it, but you can go back and look at earlier stuff from like Brooks and Mercer, the crossover effect and that type of thing. So in English, what does it mean? It means using the right fuel at the right time. So as you know, most of the time during the day, so for example, if we're just, sitting here chatting, the main fuel that our body would want to be using is fat. And if we were to go out and exercise and we go out and do some stone lifting, all sorts of fun stuff like that, we would want the ability to use primarily carbohydrates in order to fuel that exercise. So there's a lot of debate about, using fat all the time is the best way to go. No, carbohydrates are better and all this debate. And the reality is there really shouldn't be too much debate in my mind. It's actually you want to be able to use both, right? So the downside with fat is you cannot get the same power output that you can by using carbohydrates. That's just a fact of bioenergetics. Downside is if you're constantly using carbohydrates all the time, there's a more likelihood that you may have problems with body composition, especially if you're not active. You can run into disease processes like type 2 diabetics, that type of thing. So it's actually, metabolic flexibility is about using the right fuel at the right time and then how fast you can switch back and forth between those. So it's treating the whole metabolism instead of as this very static system that doesn't change or only using one fuel. It's actually treating it as a dynamic system so that you can switch back and forth and use both.
Okay, so would it be more relevant in a real world sense for kind of fat loss or body composition, or do you think it'd be more performance based, or both? What?
Yeah, I actually think it's both. So how I view fat loss is that it's the stuff that I do is all very what I call performance-based fat loss. And yeah, you can do crazy stuff. And if I cut my calories in half tomorrow and ran and did a bunch of cardio, would I lose weight? Would I lose fat? Of course I would. Am I going to be able to continually do that? No. Is that going to be probably the best way to go? No. So what I do is I look at, like, the very first thing someone comes to me and says, "Hey, my fat loss goals are stuck. I haven't making any progress," which is, pretty common when people come talk to me, because if they're doing well, they probably won't come talk to me usually most of the time. First thing I look at is, what is their overload? So what are they doing in the gym? Are they doing cardio? What type of exercise are they doing? And then are they really doing more volume, right? So how much work they're doing. Are they able to, for example, lifting over time, can they actually lift more weight? And that could be 1 rep max, 5 rep max, however you want to measure it. And then is their density better? So their volume divided by time. So how much work they did divided by the time that it took them. And if those are getting better, then I know for sure that their body has the stimulus in order to get a positive adaptation. If those things are not in place, it becomes really, really hard, one, to sustain it, and two, I think you're just kind of working against yourself because your body doesn't have that big positive stimulus in order to make a change. And most people are looking at body composition, right? They want to lose fat. They don't really want to lose a lot of muscle, right? So if they're still doing the things that can keep or increase muscle, that's going to be better. And then after that, then I look at nutrition stuff. You can argue all day if which one's more important. The reality is it's both, right? It's like if I have a bicycle and I put a square tire on it, it's going to be pretty damn hard to pedal it, right?
Yeah.
I shouldn't argue about what tire is better. I should just, take the one that's square and make it round, right? So for a lot of people, they're really good with their diet and their exercise has just been tanking. Other people are the reverse, right? Their diet is pretty good in nutrition and then their exercise is pretty horrible. So it just depends on where they're at for each one of those.
So do you have in regards to your approach, how would you define your approach? Would it be like similar to paleo? Would it be like an elimination diet? How would you kind of break down your approach with your clients?
Yeah. So what I do is I think all those things actually have benefits. So I get sorts of weird emails from people because I presented on carbohydrates at an Ancestral Health Society last year, and I'm presenting at Paleo FX this year, and so I get people that don't like the paleo diet because it's mostly because of the definition, right? So it's whatever our ancestors did, that must have been awesome. Well, that's not necessarily true, right? I have a car. I don't put my feet through the floor and pedal like a Flintstone either. But do I think most people do better if they base their diet around whole, nutritious foods? Yeah, that's usually the first thing I recommend to them. So I basically take all of it and just say, hey, what works best for them. In one day, I've had raw organic liver I got from a farmer in Wisconsin, and then I had a Pop-Tart the same day. Freaks the hell out of people. I don't know what to do with that, right? I don't like viewing foods as inherently good or bad. It's just, are they, getting you closer to your goals or not? And a lot of that depends on where you're at, what you're doing, all that kind of stuff. I think it was Dr. John Berardi who said once that, if you're stuck on a desert island somewhere and someone drops you like a crate full of peanut M&Ms, damn, those are probably the best thing ever, right? Because it's better than the 2 coconuts you had left or whatever, right? Does that mean people should be eating peanut M&Ms all day? No, that's probably not going to be the best thing to get to their goals either. But I just don't like all the hang-ups people have of, oh, this is a good food, this is a bad food. Yeah, there are, things that will get you closer or farther away from your goals. It just depends, because it's too often I see people become just neurotic about their food, right? And almost every time that happens, their progress just tanks. So.
Good time. So in regards to meal frequency with your kind of fat loss approach, do you have a set kind of template, or would you rather just maybe kind of dictate it to the client or let their schedule choose?
Sure. The reality is, if you were to ask me this 5 years ago, I would have come up with some elaborate, fancy plan on what the best is. Ironically, now and for the last probably 5 years, the first question I ask them is what is their lifestyle? Because it's just like training, right? So the first question you're going to ask someone is, okay, how many times can you make it to the gym? How many times can you do exercise? So if I write a 5-day-a-week plan and you can only get there twice on Saturday and Sunday, well, that plan's going to suck, right? It doesn't matter how well and intricate I have or advanced Russian periodization block method, whatever. It doesn't matter, right? So I ask them now, what is their lifestyle and what do they think that they can do? And, sometimes there are concessions, right? If they say, well, I can only eat twice a day, we'll make those 2 meals better, and then I probably will have them go to a 3rd meal a day. If they say, I don't care, I'll do whatever you want, The simplest one I use is just, I call it the 4x40 approach. So have about 4 meals per day, includes pre and after training, and have about 40 grams of protein per meal. If you're a woman, you can maybe drop that to 30. And then just do that first, and then worry about the rest of it after that. The reason for that is protein has a really high satiety effect, right? So you're going to eat it. You're not going to feel as hungry. You know, if you just ate 2 chicken breasts, it's less likely you're going to eat, half of a birthday cake, right? It may happen. I've done it before, so it can happen. It's not an absolute, but less likely, right? And protein is also used to increase recovery, related to muscle tissue, that type of thing. And running that process of muscle protein synthesis, so taking amino acids and stuffing them into muscle tissue specifically, is a very energetically expensive process. And we want to do everything we can to increase or minimum maintain muscle. So at a bare minimum, if they just start doing that, usually most people actually make pretty good progress just by doing that alone.
So with your online clients, do you have sort of a tracking system in place? Like, for example, do they log with you every week what they're eating and kind of track it all for you?
Yeah, so the 2 things I do on that. So the first thing I do is I track overload. I use a program called Adaptifier, and what it allows me to do is, I didn't design it. Dave Delnave designed it. It's basic, but it works really, really well. So that way they can track volume, intensity, and density on every single exercise that they do. So even if I'm only having them do more volume, I don't want to have them do more volume at the massive expense of those other 2 most of the time, right? So what's nice about that is it's really simple. So if you're going to do the old, 3 sets of 10 Delore method for bench press that everyone goes to the gym Monday and does, I don't know if it's like that over there.
It's worldwide.
U.S., right? It's literally as simple as, okay, so you found the weight that you can do 10 reps at pretty good speed, so your last one should be relatively fast. And then when you start the first set, just hit start on a little stopwatch or your phone. And then after the first set, rest enough that you can get 10 good reps on the next set. So after you do your second set, rest again, enough time that you need to get 10 nice reps on your last one, rack the weight, and then hit stop. So maybe it took you 10 minutes and 32 seconds. Cool. So now we know the weight, we know how many sets you did, we know how many reps you did, and we know how long it took you for time. The really nice part about that is, especially if you're programming online, and even if you work in a studio, you're probably not going to be with your client every single session that they do. If you can, that's awesome, that's even better, but a lot of times that's just not possible. I can look now and see what the intensity is, what the volume, and what the density is. So if they repeated that next week, and they did the exact same thing, but they did it in 9 minutes and 17 seconds, they actually got better in terms of a density score. So I know at least that there's some overload that's being applied to their system. And the really nice part too is when you're online, you have people of all different conditioning backgrounds, cardiorespiratory fitness, all that kind of stuff. It allows them to get the quality work in and not force their rest so short that they're sacrificing the amount of work that they're doing. So the program goes in and lets me spy on people and see, what they did. So all their sets, reps, overload is all tracked.
Okay, awesome.
For nutrition stuff, I used to write very detailed plans and, protocols of here's meal 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I stopped doing that probably again about 4 or 5 years ago. It just ended up being a debacle, to be honest, because people would, if they accepted it and said, okay, I'm doing this is going to be awesome, and they did it to 100%, and then they have one meal where they go out with their buddies, oh, I had a beer, oh my gosh, it wasn't on my plan, maybe I had a Guinness or something tasty like that, then they're just wrecked. And I'm like, going out and having, you guys say, 1 pint, right, or a pint, is probably not going to ruin all your gains that you had in the past week, right? But there's that mental association that, oh my gosh, I'm off the plan, I'm screwed. And the reality is, at some point, probably not going to work with me. They're probably going to be off the plan entirely. So I'm trying to get them ready for that. So I just found that even writing plans, even if they were adhered to, it didn't work. If they didn't adhere to it, even 90% or 100% or whatever I said the compliance was, then they also feel horrible because, oh my gosh, you wrote me the perfect plan and I'm not following it. Oh, my life is horrible. And so I just stopped doing all that stuff. So literally all I do now is I do a 3-day nutrition log. Okay, take 3 days, 2 days during the week, 1 weekend day, and literally write everything down that you eat and drink and send it to me. And the main reason I do that is I'm actually trying to get them to be more aware of what they're doing. Because one of the first clients I had years ago, we used to have all these arguments about his nutrition. And he was about 50, 60 pounds overweight. And I asked him, he's like, how's your nutrition? He's like, perfect. I'm thinking, okay, I think there's probably some changes we can make here. He's like, no, I just want to focus on exercise. I know in the back of my head, just like that if they do exercise only, their chance of success is actually very small, especially with body composition changes. Mm-hmm. So we argued back and forth for several weeks. And finally, I just got so frustrated. I just said, oh, okay, fine, man. Take this, log everything down you eat and drink. We'll keep it on file. It'll be your baseline. If you decide later you want to do something different, we'll look at it again. It's like, okay. Comes back next week, sits down, and has his head down and, shuffles the papers across the table. And I'm looking at him, I'm like, what happened? I'm thinking his dog got hit on the way over or something, and he looks at me and he goes, yeah, my nutrition sucks. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is like the same guy who a week ago, and for 3 months we've been arguing about how perfect his nutrition was. And the reality is that he wasn't really outright lying to me. He was just completely oblivious, right? He was so unconscious to what he was stuffing in his pie hole that he had no idea. And so it's impossible really to make a sustaining change if people are just unconscious to what they're doing. So what I found was the really twofold benefit of it. One, I get a snapshot to see what they're doing, right? So there's probably changes they can make to what they're doing. The second one was that by the virtue act of them writing it down, they now have much, much more awareness of what they were actually doing. So I have them do that, and I tell clients, I'm like, just literally write it down. Don't try to impress me. I don't want it to look perfect. I just want a representation of what you're doing. Fascinatingly, some new dentists actually tell clients, don't come in after you brushed your teeth. I want to see what your teeth look like normally, right? So that's what you're trying to get at. So then I'll look through and I'll pick out 1 to 2 things that I think are the biggest thing. More protein, maybe fish oil, moving carbohydrates, food selection. And then literally I just ask them about it. I said, hey, how's your protein intake? Oh, I don't know. It's okay. I said, well, here's the advantages of eating a higher protein. Is that something you can do for maybe, let's say, breakfast? Oh, yeah, I think I can do that. Cool. So then we track that for about a week, move on to the next one. So it's very customized because I'm looking at them and I'm looking to see what is sort of the 1 or 2 things they can do for, I call it metabolic leverage, the least amount of effort they can put in, but get to a pretty high result from that. And then over time, those things will increase, and then the result that you're going to see are going to be a little bit less, right? And, as some people, you get to a very elite level, so maybe we're talking about taking beta-alanine or some specific supplements to get them maybe a couple percentage. Does the average person need to start there? No. They just need to go out, and I've told people this all the time, is that just go, if you eat dead animals, right? Just go buy half a cow or a quarter of a cow, get a freezer, throw it in there, right? So now, if you can get it local, even better. So now you go out in your garage and go, oh, wow, I got lots of protein, right? So you're probably not going to run out, right? Because that's probably better than, worrying about the latest pre-workout, whiz-bang, whatever, right?
True.
So start with the basics and then progress from there. So
awesome. So one of the debates that we kind of see a lot at the moment online, especially with all the online experts that we see on Facebook, is
sure.
For example, the biggest recent craze that I've seen is if it fits your macros, for example.
Yeah.
What's your kind of stance on kind of quality versus quantity? So would you rather have someone not measure macros at all and eat fully, just eat kind of instinctively, or do you think the macro kind of approach is a good way to go?
Yeah. So, I know a lot of people that use the if it fits your macro. I've even coached people who use that, was their preferred method. They liked it. They weren't too neurotic about it. They were getting good results. One guy in particular I just worked with recently was a natural competitor. I actually didn't change it, to be honest. It wasn't broke. I didn't really see any need to. So I know a lot of people get very good results by doing that. For me, my preference, that's actually not where I would start with people, even more elite competitors, if they came to me and that wasn't their predisposition already.
Mm.
Eventually, I do like more the intuitive approach because I really believe that we have lots of awesome science and everything, but your body has all of the data for you specifically. It's just trying to figure out ways to interpret it, possibly doing little experiments to see how you react, that type of thing. Um, the downside is that most people can't do intuitive eating right away because their intuition sucks.
Yeah.
Like their intuition is eat, Twinkies and Pop-Tarts and, are those bad, horrible, evil foods? No. Could you have gotten a better result possibly from a chicken breast or lean meat or salmon or something? Yeah. So it can work. What I do with people in general is that if I increase the quality of food that they eat, they will almost pretty much every time so far spontaneously eat less. And I think that association is often lost, right? Because you get all the people who argue about, oh, no, 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 calories definitely matter. It's thermodynamics. It's the first law of thermodynamics. Energy is not created nor destroyed. And that's kind of true, but it's actually the second law related to entropy. And I took way more thermal classes and heat transfer stuff than I care to imagine. But the thing is that those rules apply when we look at studies where people are locked in a metabolic ward chamber. Absolutely everything is controlled. The food in is controlled. The food out, how much you move, how much you exercise. All that stuff's accounted for. And in that situation, do calories matter? Yes, they do. But in the real world, people live in an open system. And so you can't directly, because of behavioral reasons, take all those things and apply it to people in the real world. So in the real world, if you eat higher quality, you tend to eat less. And if you want to use an ancestral viewpoint or paleo or whatever, it makes sense, right? Because if your body, I believe, is very much survival based, it says, I need some essential fats. I need, micronutrition. I need, macronutrition, protein, that type of thing. If you can provide those things, it makes sense that you're probably going to be less hungry, right? Because your body says, well, I don't need any more zinc or whatever it is, so I'm doing okay. There's a couple of mice studies. I haven't seen too much in humans yet, looking at micronutrition related to obesity, the size of their fat cells, how much they ate. So in general, eat higher quality, people will automatically eat less. So I always try to do an expansion approach. I don't like the whole mindset of dieting and everything is restriction. Everyone's like, well, just eat less. I'm like, okay, does that work? Yeah. But if that was as simple, right, we wouldn't even have freaking jobs. People would come in and they go, hey, dude, just eat less. Hey, done. You owe me like $100. It doesn't work. Does that mean it's not accurate? No, it's accurate. So I look at their diet and say, okay, let's increase the amount of protein here. Let's change from an incomplete protein to a complete protein. Let's increase some vegetables, some micronutrition, add some healthy fats, kind of basic stuff. And then let's monitor your performance, right? Because in a perfect world, I literally want people to feel like they're eating more volumes of food and actually doing more, right? Because now I'm increasing the capacity of their body. At some point, do we have to maybe drop a little bit here and there? Yeah, but if you're neutral, let's say on 1,200 calories per day, then we can get you up to say 2,500, and you're still not gaining or losing. I mean, where do you want to be, right? People would always want to be much higher, right? Because if you have to cut a little bit, you have something to cut from, and it becomes, sustainable too. So I actually kind of take sort of the middle road approach. I think it can work. The thing I do like about the if it fits your macros type thing, they don't tend to be as hung up on food types as being horrible, almost to the other extent of like, hey, Pop-Tart's the greatest food ever. Just, I think, to show people that you don't have to be neurotic about it. The flip side is they're neurotic about counting everything to the nth degree. I mean, I've gone to dinner with these people, and they'll break out little scales to weigh their food. And I'm not kidding. They joke that, oh, it's my little drug dealer scale because it goes down to like, half a gram or whatever. And To me, I don't care. If that works for you and that's what you want to do, that's awesome. Am I going to be able to take most of my clients and get them to do that? No. And what I need to get to that nth degree with most people? No. If you're getting ready to step on stage in a few days, may you get to that point? Maybe, but I definitely would not start there at that point. So
awesome. So again, we mentioned kind of earlier, you said about supplementation as well. What's your view kind of overall with your clients and yourself on the supplements you should take? Is it kind of stick with the basics, or do you find, obviously it's tailored, I understand that, but
yeah.
Generally, how would you kind of approach supplements with clients?
Sure. I don't think supplements are either good nor evil per se. The one advantage to supplements is that the amount of action they need to do it is actually really, really small. So that's good, right? So if we know someone is short in essential fatty acids, in a perfect world, would I tell them to go buy some wild, caught Alaskan salmon, make it for dinner and have it every night, or 3 nights a meal according to AHA recommendations? Yeah, that'd be awesome. Is that realistically going to happen for 99% of the people? No. Can they buy a nice high-quality fish oil supplement, take some in the morning? Yep, they can probably do that. Are they going to get almost the exact same benefit? I would argue very, very, very close based on what we know currently. So supplements have an advantage in that the action they need to do is relatively small. Disadvantage is for a lot of them, especially ones that are not very much, I would say, sort of food-based, protein, fish oil, that type of thing. If you look in the research, the percentage that you get in performance or changes is small, right? Almost all of it is single-digit percentage. So I think it was Paul Chek who once said that supplements are kind of like gold nails. If you're trying to build the boat and you've got crappy wood and you're putting gold nails on it, doesn't make a lot of sense. As nutty as a lot of his other ideas were, I actually kind of like that one. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
So once their food quality is better, then I look at fish oil, protein. Whey proteins are really good, so we don't have any allergies to dairy, that type of thing. Even other ones that I would say are more performance-based, like creatine monohydrate, have a lot of benefits. It's very cheap. It's not that hard to do. Some new studies show there's neuroprotective effects. So some ones like that I think are actually useful in the U.S., especially northern climates, vitamin D. So pretty much the standard ones. I do more specific stuff with that. So if clients have everything in order, and say for example they're doing a CrossFit competition or something like that, yeah, we may look at very specific types of protein and specific types of carbohydrates before, after, and during, especially during competitions when their stress level is really high. Other things to increase, I guess you could say glycolytic work like beta-alanine, that type of thing. So it really just depends with where the person is at and how much that extra percentage actually matters, right? If you're an elite competitor and you're going to step on stage, does taking branch chains possibly between meals to reset the protein synthetic response, is that going to be beneficial? Maybe. There's one animal study that shows mechanistic-wise, that may be good. Is that going to be a point where the average person is going to go out and do that and see a massive benefit? What we know now, probably not, right? So again, it depends on where you're at and how much that extra percentage means to people. Most people go backwards, right? And they go, oh, my training sucks, so I need a new pre-workout. It's like, oh, okay, that was your problem, right? That you didn't have the right pre-workout for your training. It's probably that you didn't sleep last night, your training is set up horribly, and nutrition's not even close to what you need, right? Does that mean a pre-workout is a horrible thing? Not necessarily, but trying to rely on it to solve all the world's evils just doesn't.
Bad times. So, in regards to, I know, for example, you do a lot of strongman training.
Yeah.
What do you kind of prescribe for your clients? Do you find that strongman training and kind of more functional movement is better in the real world terms?
The short answer is yes. So what I did was I used to work in gyms, the commercial gyms and all that stuff, and it was okay. It's kind of a pain, especially driving back and forth, all that kind of stuff. But the last place I worked at filed bankruptcy, so I got kicked out, and I lost a bunch of money and stuff. So I said, okay, now what am I going to do now? I said, all right, I got mad at the whole system and said, I'm just going to start training people in my garage. Screw you if no one wants to come. Hey, I got a really cool gym in my garage. I'll be okay. And the benefit, then I said, well, if it's my gym, I'm going to set it up with equipment that I want to use. So very, very basic stuff, squat, rack, tires, kettlebells, sandbags, pretty much all that kind of stuff. Now I've got stones. I've got like 5 different types of bars. But what I found was when I started training clients there, my initial thought was, oh my gosh, they're not going to come here. This is some nut job in his garage. This is too weird, man. But it actually was better because it was private. No one even knew they were there. No one's watching them. Nobody cared. So it was okay for them to make a mistake, right? So if I was going to teach them a kettlebell swing and they've never done one before, they're probably not going to be very good at it, right? And they're like, oh, I suck at it. It's like, well, how many have you ever done in your life? Well, that was my first rep. Oh, well, that was pretty good then, right? And it kind of took away a lot of the, I guess, sort of associations they had. And the other thing I would tell people is that if you look at what they had done in the past, most people had done, I did a lot of treadmill running, I went to the gym, all that kind of stuff, and it's a big commercial place. And so I would literally tell people that, okay, that's cool, that didn't work for you, but we don't do any of that stuff here. We don't have a treadmill, we don't really have any machines, and this will work much better for you. Is that kind of a lie? Yeah. Is it true? Yes. Does that mean they could not get a result with a commercial gym? No. It just means that I'm trying to disassociate myself from all of their past failures. Because I don't want any of that stuff associated with what we're doing here. And what we do here is actually very different than what they've done in the past. So I actually found that they liked it better because even teaching deadlifts, I don't know how many women I've taught to deadlift now. And and I'm sure you've done the exact same thing. Yeah. There's something very cool. Even if they just lift 95 pounds or the bar or whatever, it's almost always way more than they thought they could ever do, even on the first day. So the classic thing I do all the time is kettlebell swings. Here's a kettlebell. Okay, here's how you do it. You go through the whole thing. And they do it, and they set it down, and they go, well, how heavy is that? I'm like, oh, it's just a 12. Oh, okay, I'm going to do some more. And at the end, they're like, well, what was the weight of that? And I said, well, it was a 12, but it was 12 kilograms, right? 25 pounds. And they're like, 25 pounds or whatever the weight was, I can't do that. I'm like, you just did it, right? You did 3 sets of it already. You already did it. Oh, no, that's too heavy. I'm like, okay, but how heavy is your kid that you'll wander around all day carrying in one arm, running up and down the stairs, right? So it seems to be more prevalent in women that this association of weight is just kind of off. And to me, I think it has a much better positive transfer. I mean, because people bend down to pick up laundry baskets, heavy stuff, People are like, why are we doing farmers walks? Well, because have you ever carried groceries before? Oh, okay, yeah. And it's not like I'm going to have them start super heavy. It's going to be light. It's going to be progressive to, where they're at. And I just find people usually have more fun, get a better result. Car pushes, sled drags, ropes, all that stuff I think is actually really good.
Yeah, I love it. Awesome. So, as my final question,
yeah,
what would be your go-to resources for kind of current personal trainers that have been in the industry for a while in regards to nutrition and research? Like, where would you send them to develop their kind of nutrition skills?
Oh boy. I know you're working on some new resources, which I haven't seen yet, but I'm sure that'll be very, very useful. To be perfectly honest, there's not a lot of, I would say good information per se. I know John Berardi runs Precision Nutrition. He's got a lot of good stuff. There's a lot of good, I think, nutritionists that do good work via websites and stuff that is good. For trainers, if you're looking at like certification type stuff, Precision Nutrition one is pretty good. If you're looking for very detailed stuff, the International Society of Sports Nutrition has a certified CISSN. So I'm an editorial review board for their journal, just as a full disclosure type thing. They always do good stuff. If you can get to their conference in Florida, it's actually really, really cool. Very much practical and also research-based. And, everyone there is super nice, very useful. Those would probably be my top resources. To me, I always think it's good to learn how to read basic research, go to PubMed, pull the articles. You can usually talk to a buddy, get the full article. A lot of them are published open access now. So I published a study on Monster Energy drinks at JISSN. So that's all open access. I paid a lot of money so people can read it for free, basically. The hard part is you would need a little bit of a background on how to read and decipher studies. And, probably most people aren't going to do that. I don't know what the media is like over there, but in the U.S. it's pretty horrible in general, I guess you could say. Because their goal is a headline to get you to read something. And that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But even the whole article then gets skewed real off, unfortunately, in one direction. So the things I know a little bit about that I see in the media, I tend to, fortunately, not really trust. So, any other resources you'd recommend?
Well, to be honest, in the UK, the top ones we kind of look at are Precision Nutrition. That's known worldwide, I assume, as one of the best to go to. And again, that's kind of what I was thinking of. Really, was the how to read research studies. Because I know a lot of personal trainers will see, for example, they'll see something posted, and they'll go, "Oh, this is the greatest new thing that we can use for our clients," but they don't. And then it comes out, "Oh, this was only tested on one horse," or whatever.
Right.
It's just not valid. So I think that's probably one of the biggest problems is people not being able to research their own stuff independently. That to me would stick out as the biggest issue. Do you have any areas that you think a lot of personal trainers fall down on in regards to nutrition advice, like maybe the psychological aspect or a consultation, or is there anything that you see a lot of in the States or in general where people fall down?
Yeah, I would say that if you would have asked me this probably 6-ish years ago, I would have said, "Oh no, it's all the physiology aspect, right? They need to know proteins, fats, carbohydrates, and meal planning 101, yak. And all that stuff I think is really, really important. Is it definitely useful? Yes. Is it useful if the client won't buy into it? It's unfortunately, sadly, worthless at that point. So I've realized that when I first started working with clients that there's all the psychological aspect that was much more limiting than actually the physiology. And then I felt like I wanted to go cry because I spent way too many years studying the wrong field and that type of thing. So now what I tell people is, go get some good basic information. Yes, you probably should know something about how energy is created in the body, what fuels are used, basic stuff like that. And then I would look at more behavioral type stuff. How do you get people to make changes? And then after that, I would really look at, as woo-woo as it sounds, like kind of mindset type stuff, right? How can you if you can get their mind just to change, the physiology stuff usually will fall right in line. But if you're really, really stuck on that part, man, it makes it really hard. I'm shameless self-promotion. I'm actually doing a new project on mindset with Brian Grasso and Bobby Cupertino, BTA Global.
Awesome.
We have some really cool stuff coming out on that. I'm doing all the research based on it, looking at the neurology. And the whole thing is like, okay, how can we get people's mindset to change in the shortest amount of time so that they can get the result that they want to get? And if you look at a lot of the statistics, they're sadly pretty horrible, right? If you look at how many people go to make changes and how many times that sticks, it's sadly a very low number. So I would say it's a combination of good, solid, basic physiologic principles. Even just get an old, used, exercise 101 textbook from Amazon or whatever, right? It's probably cost you $15. Make sure you know that. Is it sexy? No. But if you don't know the basic stuff, anything you add on top of that's going to be lost. And then I would look at, sort of mindset-driven type stuff. How do you get people to make changes, and how do you get those changes to stick at that point?
Awesome. Good times. Well, thanks for your time. I'm sure if you have any questions, then I'll get them put up on the website for you.
Yeah, for sure. People can check me out. It's just www.miketnelson.com and get 6 free fat loss videos and stuff there too. So
awesome. I'll check it out as well.
All right, cool.
Good times. Thanks for your time, buddy.
Yes, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Have a good day. Speak to you soon.
Thank you.